Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast, the silly and serious shenanigans of two queer relationship coaches. I am your host, Elizabeth Cunningham.
And I'm your host, Lee Greeps.
On this podcast, we talk about how to live your best queer life with fulfilling, healthy relationships and anything else that makes your little queer heart happy. Because living your life outside of the heteronormative scripts is totally possible for you.
Each episode, we explore all things queer love from our professional perspective as relationship coaches, our own personal experiences, and as partners.
If you love our show, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships. You can also check out our website, www.queerloverelationships.com.
Thanks for following us and enjoy this episode. Being driven from that fact of, well, I'm not enough, right? Because so I have to make up for the fact that I'm queer, right? But then that is playing out in your relationships too.
Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast.
Woo, 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 woo. Woo, woo, woo.
Where we don't know what sounds Lee is going to make.
I'm keeping y'all on your toes. Keeping you interested. So you keep things spicy. I'm teaching you a relational skill.
That's right.
Keeping
Novelty.
novel.
That's right.
Yeah. That's what keeps them coming back.
Keeps them coming.
That's right.
Yeah.
Obviously. All these people lined up to date me.
I bet.
No.
Especially with this podcast. There's people who listen to this podcast that are like, man, I wish that Lee would date me.
Right.
I believe that. I know that.
Oh, there you go. It's because I keep them on their toes.
Oh, yes. Sure. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about how healing on an individual level, how that then impacts healing on a collective level and relational level. Is that what we're...
Yeah, like, why are you...
Because your face is not telling me I'm doing it right, man.
I'm just concerned. You seem very stressed.
I get stressed because you're giving me a concerned look, and I'm like, oh no.
I didn't think I was looking at you in a very concerned way.
That was a concerned way.
Okay. Well, okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Do you want to state it again?
Healing on an individual level and how that impacts healing on a collective and relational level.
See, I'm just smiling. Like, I'm not.
That's what we're talking about.
Great. So, healing on an individual level, like ripples out to then your relationships, and then also healing individually and healing relationally, then ripples out to your community and society. So yeah, that is what we are talking about today. What does it mean to heal on an individual level?
Oh, are you asking me that question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you pose the question and then you say to...
That's true. That's fair. That is fair. I can appreciate that.
And I was like, okay, are you gonna go or am I going?
You go.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess I'll just speak to it from like my experience personally, and then also like what I've seen in, clients that I work with. And yeah, I mean, like, I think healing, I like the idea of it. I think this is from like Carolyn Mace, but she speaks to it like, if you're healing like from past trauma and things, and that's, relational trauma. It can be from childhood, or it can be from your last relationship, like, but it's, to heal from that is to, gain the wisdom of that experience and then kind of leave the rest, or like, tend to it and maybe like, processing through whatever is left, right? And so, I mean, I always like the, analogy with like, you're attending to like a physical wound, right? That to heal a infected wound, you need to, number one, be with the fact that there is an infected wound, and to address it and to be with it, and that might mean poking at it and cleaning it out, and and that can look like on like in terms of like relational healing work of doing some sort of therapy work or some other modality like counseling, coaching, even like Reiki and things. Like there's so many different ways that you can heal and dance, like so many different ways. But it's really being able to be with that, address it, process through, clean it up, so that you can not have that govern your life or like govern your behaviors and ways of being in the world, in the relationships and everything. And for me, it's in healing, it's really removing the things that are blocking you from being in the genuine expression of yourself, because you're removing those like the filters that the pain creates, that maybe are limiting beliefs, or they're these stories that you keep about yourself or about relationships or about other people and what love is or what is possible and all of that. And so it's like you can come into like your genuine expression and your genuine desires. So again, just coming back to like you're taking the wisdom of what of the past in that, and tending to whatever else is there, and just kind of letting that kind of scar over in a way, as opposed to letting it just kind of fester. And so looking at it on an individual level, like it's you working with your individual experience, and then of course like part of that isn't just like, oh yeah, it's all just on me, but like in relationships, like whether it's in a partnership or maybe friendships or whatever it is, like to also have that kind of mirrored expression back to you of your healing, and being able to practice all the things that maybe you never did in the past because of the hurt and the pain, like voicing a need or voicing when someone has hurt you, and advocating for yourself, and those things, right? Like it's all part of the healing process of that. So it's not just like you just doing it in a 1 hour therapy session a week or whatever. Like it is just that continual process that is happening, that then ripples out from there, because like you're healing a relationship, and then it's like you showing up differently is also being able to offer someone else the opportunity to heal as well, should they choose that.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there they get to offer that to the experiences that they bring with other relationships or how they show up in the world, and then bam bam bam, domino effect, boom boom boom. And it also it's also really powerful to see like when you witness that in another person, or you witness that in a relationship, where you're like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible. Like I see how they just handled that conflict, or I can see how like this person has grown and progressed, and then all these different things where that can be very inspiring for you, to be like, wow, that is possible. And I know that for people in my life that have like, oh, you're doing that, and then it's like then they share with me about what they're doing, like they start going into therapy or they start looking into this or that, and they're like, dude, this is so tough. But it's the fact of being able to see that it is possible, and so when you start to see that it's possible on an individual level, you'll start to think, well, it's possible on a relational level, it's possible on a communal level, it's possible on a citywide level, just continuing to expand into like the collective side of things. I answered so much more than the original question, but in a nutshell, that is what individual healing is to me.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'll add as well, and this is something that I have heard many people say over the years in coaching, is they're like, oh, well, I don't have any trauma to heal from. And I am going to give you a little pushback on that because not because I want everyone to like have trauma. Um but
There's
like
different levels.
but there's different yeah, and there's different types of trauma. Types is not the right way to say it, but like degrees of trauma, ways that trauma can happen. And I think, excuse me, like how we have been, if you are a human being, you have endured trauma. Like if you're a human being and you have, especially if you're queer and you're you know,
That's all I'm like, if you're queer,
if you're queer, you have
you've
trauma.
experienced trauma,
Like you've
also on a
experienced trauma
societal
on
level.
yeah, because it's
on a cultural level.
On a cultural level, on a societal level, maybe on a, you know, even if you've had, I'm thinking of one client specifically where they're like, no, I was raised in a really good family. I still have good relationships like with my what they said was pretty sure what they said was, I have a good relationship with my mom, but we don't talk about my dad. And I'm like, okay. And like I'm sorry, not to laugh at like someone's, you know, trauma, but it's to laugh at the absurdity of like being human and how we don't want to look at our issues. Like we don't want to look,
it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Like we don't want to be uncomfortable. And so we're like, no, it wasn't that bad. No, I haven't been assaulted, so therefore I don't have trauma.
Yeah, you start to play like the trauma Olympics.
Right, exactly.
Like comparison. Well, like I wasn't
my
abused.
parents didn't hit me.
Yeah,
you know, like I don't have trauma.
No one ever yelled.
Right.
You know, or things of that nature, right?
Yeah, and it's like, listen, I was a kindergartner on the playground and I got completely humiliated one day because one of the little boys who I had a crush on, put worms in my hair. And then like what the kindergarten teacher's reconciliation method was that he had to apologize to me in front of the entire class, which was extremely traumatizing because I had to stand there as like the girl who had worms in her hair, like on display. Not only was I like traumatized by this little boy who I had a crush on, like putting worms in my hair, but also like this kind of like being put on display, like, you know, it was very embarrassing. It was like extremely humiliating as a little kid. And like that stayed with, and not like stayed with me, like I, you know, replayed it over and over and over in my mind. But what happens is that in that moment, like every time that something happens, you make a decision. Like that's how your brain works, because your brain is a prediction machine. Mm-hmm. And so your brain catalogs everything that happens to you, makes a decision about it, and then files it away. And then you do all of that subconsciously, but then that subconscious runs your entire life. So the decision that I made as like a little kid was like, I can't trust the people that I like, and I also never want to tell people if something bad happens to me. Mm-hmm. And that has played out throughout my life, as my mom can attest to, who listens to this podcast. My mom's like, why do you always have to wait until something dire happens to tell me about it? And I'm like, because when I was 5, I got worms in my hair, and then the kindergarten teacher made him apologize to me in front of the whole class, and it was terrible.
And that's, I mean, I think just also, you know, we've said this on other episodes, but like there is such a charge around the word trauma. Mm-hmm. But it's like just the concept of like it's too much, too fast, too soon, or too little for too long. You know, and so it's like, even if you think about, you know, someone who's like, oh, I had a great upbringing, you know, like we were very well off, you know, and we always had enough and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, maybe you had all that because your dad was always working, and like, you know, even when he was around, it was great, like, right? But it's like he was always gone. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, oh, too little for too long, right? Like you didn't have the connection you wanted with your dad. You know, he wasn't around all the time, right? Like he was barely around, or he was barely available. Like you always wanted to go play baseball with him, but he was working, right? And it's not just like, and that's again, it's he was doing the best that he could, like he wanted to provide for his family, right, and everything. But it's like that can then create that sense of, oh man, the people around me, like like I'm not enough, right? Like maybe then you turn into like an overachiever, like you want to get the attention, you want to get the praise, you want it, like it's like, oh well, if I do well, then maybe he'll spend time more at home or whatever it is. And so it's like that's then going to play out in your later relationships, right? Where maybe you choose partners that do the same thing, where they're busy or occupied with other things, whether it's work or not, right? Mm-hmm. It could be like really into tennis. They're always gone playing tennis. Yeah. But so then you're always like, and you've turned into this like workaholic kind of person too. Like you're just like, well, I have to always do the thing, and then people will love me, and then they'll spend time with me, and then I'll be worth their time, and like that's how that then plays out. It's like, yeah, your dad was a great guy, mm-hmm. and that experience though then created these stories, like you said, right. from that experience as a kid, but like that creates those stories, and it's those kinds of stories what you want to heal, right? What you want to address and go, wait a minute, that, I don't have to prove my worth to be loved, right? Like, I don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. But you are then being able to operate from that space of consciousness versus like that's the subconscious beliefs that are running the show, because that's what kept you safe and gave you a semblance of love as a child, right? Or, in earlier relationships, whatever it was.
Right, exactly. And also that everyone, because again, this is just how our brain works. Mm-hmm. And so every single human being has made up stories about what works, what doesn't work, what they need, what they don't need, how
what something means, what something
doesn't mean, how they can trust people, how they can't trust people, how they can get love from people, how they can't get love from people, mm-hmm. what they can talk about, what they can't talk about. Like we have made all of these decisions subconsciously, and then we filed them unconsciously, and then they play out unconsciously mm-hmm. in our lives. And so what it means to heal individually is to bring those things to consciousness, mm-hmm. so that you can choose how you want to. Because again, there's nothing wrong with like working.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with going to play tennis. Like there's nothing inherently wrong about what you're doing. It's just being able to choose it from a conscious place, mm-hmm. rather than do it because unconsciously you feel like this is the only way that you can achieve being lovable or mm-hmm. being of value,
or receiving love, and all of that, right? And
right.
so, and that's connecting into what I was saying earlier of like the genuine expression of yourself, right? Like, because maybe you're like, nah, like tennis is great, but like or like, no, I really enjoy my work and mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and everything. So, but you're not operating from the space of, well, this is how I receive love, like and then you can maybe change things around where it's like, oh, I can spend more time with my partner, but also like recognizing like the value I have in the work that I do, right? Like so. It's just coming from that more genuine space, and then as as a queer human, right? A lot of us, I mean, we all have our own stories based off our individual experience in upbringing in general, right? But mm-hmm. then it's also
past relationships.
Yeah, or past relationships.
I brought up childhood stuff, but it could be past adult relationships.
Like this isn't just like, oh, from the age of 0 to 12, that's the only time.
That's the only time. No, we are constantly making up stories all the time.
Right? Yeah, like this is what happens. But especially on a societal level or cultural level, like how queerness is viewed or not viewed or acknowledged, but it's like, oh, well, maybe it's, oh, there's something bad, so there's something bad about me because I am queer, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm just inherently bad, or I'm inherently wrong, or I need to make sure to I'm not enough because I am queer. and maybe that's getting heightened too from a different story that's like, around family stuff, that like I'm not enough. But it's like I'm not enough, so I have to make up for this. And I see that a lot with queer folks. It's like I am now being the overachiever. It's like, look at all the other good things I am doing. Look, I got straight A's. I'm a star athlete.
I
Look at all
got a
this.
good job.
Look at this great job.
I got a degree. I got married.
Yeah, like I like look at all these good things I am doing, and it's being driven from that fact of, well, I'm not enough, right? Because so I have to make up for the fact that I'm queer, right? But then that is playing out in your relationships too, right? Whether regardless of where that like story stemmed from, but then you also are thinking that even in your queer dynamics, right? Which is, it's so interesting. But that's also the power of when we say in like healing on an individual level and healing in a relationship. It's like, yeah, you're playing that out also with your partner of like, I'm not enough. Right, regardless of it's because I'm queer or not, like it's just that's the subconscious story. I am not enough. And so maybe it's like you're doing so much for your partner, you're like just like, I have to do this thing, and then da, 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 and da, 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 because like I'm not enough as I am, like there's something inherently wrong with me, and so I'm gonna do. And so in healing that story for yourself, and then in healing that story in your relationship, it's like, oh, there's someone who's like, you're absolutely enough. You don't have to do that to prove that to me, right? Like that then opens the doorway for you to then relate to your work differently, your community, society as a whole, like where it's you're able to see, oh, I don't have to do things that I don't genuinely want to do, to prove that I am enough, to prove that I am worthy, to prove that I'm quote unquote good, right? But it's coming from the power of this, like in yourself, in your relationship, and then that's going to then ripple outwards, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also as you do self-healing work, you begin to have more compassion for yourself. And then the more compassion for yourself, the more compassion you have for other people. It's like the more that you're able to understand yourself, the more that we're able to understand ourselves, the more that we understand others. Because one of the things that I've found in my own, healing journey, self growth, self discovery, whatever you want to call it, journey, is that number one, like all of the like what I've noticed is that all the things that I project out here, like I wish that other people would do this, like all of the judgments, I wish that other people were like this, I wish that other people weren't like this, I wish that my partner would do this, if my partner only did this, then this would be better, right? Like all of those things that I projected out here onto other people, when I really started doing like the deep inner healing work, like especially shadow work, parts work, like getting to know parts of yourself that like aren't, you know, like aren't nice. Like we all have like not nice parts of ourselves. We all have angry parts of ourselves. We all have vindictive parts of ourselves. We all have sad, grieving parts of ourselves. Like there's parts of ourselves that need that love and need that attention, but we shy away from it because we're like, oh no, that's bad. Like it's bad to be angry. Like I should, or like, again, we project it onto other people. It's like, no, I'm not like that. Other people are like that. But I hate to break it to you, we're all like that. We're all like that. We just choose different parts of ourselves to present, and then we choose different parts of ourselves to hide, or even to hide from ourselves. Like if we had the episode with Shaw talking about internal family systems. One of the things in internal family systems are exiled parts. And so there are parts of us that we have literally locked away, shut away, hid away, even from ourselves, because we don't want to face them. We don't want to admit that they're there. And again, maybe it's like part of like that could be like your internalized homophobia. Like,
that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, that's internalized homophobia, transphobia,
Mm-hmm.
and like, yeah, keeping that blocked and locked away, then also, I see that a lot with clients that,
Internalized sexism.
yeah, like I see that a lot with folks when, when maybe they're like, I don't know if I'm trans or not, and they like start freaking out about it. I mean, there's a variety of reasons to freak out about that in this world, but
Right.
but it's like when you start to like kind of explore it, it's coming from those internalized transphobic parts.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it makes sense that you would have those parts in this society.
Right.
Like it's like,
like if you
absolute sense.
if you grew up in our current society, you have internalized homophobia.
Yeah.
You have internalized transphobia. Like you have internalized sexism.
all that is
you have
there.
internalized racism. We can go on and on and on and
yeah,
on.
like all of that is there, right? And it's, and then in pushing those parts away, we're not addressing them, and then we are not, like that is then blocking you from even, being able to see like, oh wait, is that actually my genuine expression? And like that's kind of why I've shamed it away, right? Because it's like, no, it's bad, and so I'm gonna put it over here in the dungeon.
And we've done this all like unconsciously.
Yeah,
too,
like this is not you being
like
like this. I'm gonna put you right over here.
Right. You didn't do any of this consciously.
No. And but like I've seen that a lot with clients and their gender, questioning kind of exploration. And sometimes it's like, oh no, I'm genuinely not trans, but we have cleared some more of that internalized transphobia, right? And so it's like you have more freedom in that sense. And then other times it's like, oh yeah, no, I actually am trans. And this has been the block for me from actually being with that truth about myself, right? And so it is really, paying attention to these exiled parts, for whatever reason that we have exiled them, right? And again, not on a conscious, intentional level. Like we're like, oh, well, this part, we're going boop.
Yeah. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like, there's stories of people who have come out and then have been like so deeply hurt and shamed by coming out that they do intentionally put those parts, back away. So sometimes it is intentional. Most of the time, a majority of the time, it is completely unconscious and unintentional. And it's just driven by the environment that you grew up in. And that's your family, that's your friends, that's your school, that's your church, that's whatever communities that you grew up in, whatever TV, media, oh my gosh, I also know, people who are part of like online gaming communities can also have a lot of like, depending on like what game it is and what community and all of that stuff. But there's a lot of like internalized homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, ableism from like some gamer communities as well.
And any kind of
just
community.
So it's just like, but it's because it's baked into our society, and so again, it's not it's not your fault, and it's also there.
And also
it's not your fault, and it's there to deal with. If you and in choosing to deal with that and choosing to turn to those parts of you, and being like, hey, I see you, it's also considering that these parts of you are there with good intentions, right? Like every single part of you has a purpose and has a good intention and is for you in some way, like because every single part of you wants you to survive. Like the internalized homophobic part of you wants you to survive in a homophobic world.
It's like, of course you're gonna have homophobic parts in you in a homophobic society,
right? Because that homophobic part of you wants you to survive. Is like,
it's the aspect of belonging.
It's the aspect of belonging, exactly. It's like, oh my God, in order to survive in this society, I need to look down on queer people, even if I am queer, because then I will belong, then I will be loved, then I won't be alone. Like then I will survive, right? So it's like, so turning towards these parts of you is not like facing a part of you that's against you. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually facing a part of you that is totally for you and wants you to survive. And so leaning into that, leaning into these parts is very healing, because then you get to see how much these parts of you really love you and want you to do well. And then you can introduce I'm just using a lot of like IFS language. But then you can introduce these parts of you to you and be like, hey, I understand why you see the world the way that you do, and I understand that you want us to survive. And can we talk about like who I am and how like this just feels like disingenuous? And like can let's meet each other, because that part of you loves you. And so then you can have that conversation. And maybe you do that in journaling, maybe you have that in a facilitated conversation with a coach, or a therapist, right? But again, that's why it's like your self-healing journey. But the thing is that, going back to my point of like, when you have compassion for these parts of yourself, that you start to have a lot more compassion for other people. Like, you start to have less judgment for other people,
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, wow, I really understand that because I know that part of me.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
start, and then you also allow more. In that, like, there's a lot less, like, there's just less charge around that, right? Like, when you
Mm-hmm.
have that, and just on the energetic level, like, when someone is having that level of like understanding from another person, right? Because again, understanding does not mean like you're like, well, I'm condoning it.
Right.
Like, but it's like that understanding versus it's just like, this person is the worst, and like, I can't believe they would say that thing. But it's like you start to have the understanding, because it's like those parts
Yeah.
within you where you're like, I could see where that would
Yeah.
come out, right?
Right.
uh what
Yeah.
were you gonna
And
say?
it's not understanding, yeah, like condoning or tolerating or
No, no,
making
no.
okay. Like, it's not like I think that that's like when it goes a little bit too far, right? When we have done a lot of healing, and I've seen this happen too, and I've certainly been guilty of this as well, where it's like when you have done a lot of healing work and you are so compassionate and understanding about why people are the way that they are, that then you have a hard time making boundaries with people,
Yeah, I mean, that's a
right?
different,
And that
that's a
so
whole
that's
different
that's a
story.
whole different story. But that's also a part of the self
Mm-hmm.
healing journey, is like, wow, I have all of this like compassion and understanding for myself, and I'm beginning to really love and see myself more, and like I'm not afraid of these other parts of myself, which makes me feel more connected to me, which then makes me feel more connected to other people and more open and vulnerable in relationships, and I'm seeing all of this blossom. But being vulnerable makes you vulnerable. And so you also need to know how to navigate and discern in your relationships what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and how you want to, be in relationships, and what you want to see in your relationships, and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that becomes like, you know, as you do this internal work, then you start to navigate things out here. And that's where the relational healing
Mm-hmm.
can come in as well, because it's like, now you know yourself, now you've done this. And this is not linear, right? This is
No.
not like heal yourself perfectly and then have a relationship. Like, that's not how this works. This is very much like all kind of happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're doing this, then you can bring that to your relationship, or relationships, and say like, hey, this is what I'm learning about myself. And a lot of what I and Lee coach our clients through is like, as they're healing and they see that they've been tolerating behavior that doesn't work, and or is harmful in their relationships, then they have to confront this person who maybe this has been going on for
Mm-hmm.
years. And you have to confront that person and be like, hey, I've just realized in doing all of this work that this actually doesn't this behavior or this thing or whatever it is, doesn't work for me anymore. And I'm really committed to this relationship and I really want this to work and this needs to change actually. And navigating those waters, and but that's also where the relational healing comes into play, because then you can, as you navigate those waters of what works and what doesn't work for people, then you get to have that type of communication. Then you get to see your emotional or relational resiliency in action. Then you get to advocate for yourself. Then you get to really, know and trust your own boundaries, because you have to state them and then stick with them. Like there's so much that inside of that self-healing that then starts to spill over into your relationship, and then it turns into that relational.
Yeah, I mean, it's
healing.
inevitable,
Right.
because it's like in the healing process, there will be changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like as you remove the layers that tell you need to do something in order to receive love, right? In order to be worthy of love, and you start to heal those parts, and then you're like, I've been doing this thing for my partner because I thought that's what I needed to do so that they would love me. But that's actually not a genuine thing for me. And so now I have to address that with my partner of like, I actually am not available to do that thing all the time, or what have you. And then it's obviously really hard because it's this person has been used to you doing that, and then it's like, oh, and sometimes it's like, oh, okay, like that's totally fine.
Yeah, no, yeah. No problem.
Like, yeah, like that can totally happen. And then other times it's like, what? Or like you're setting up a boundary, and it's like that boundary's never been in place, and now it's like they have to orient to you differently too, and then that will stir up stuff for them most likely, and then it's then it just continues with the healing work on the relational and individual level, right? It just kind of bounces between those areas, right? But it's again, it's all in that effort to have the genuine connection with yourself, the genuine connection with the people in your life, and then like that continues to expand elsewhere, and I mean, even in the sense of maybe setting boundaries up and a relationship doesn't work, or whatever it is, and the relationship ends and whatnot, like even still, like that is creating the opportunity for healing in a variety of ways of the relationship ending, and you're not going, it's because I'm not good enough, right? Like it's right. Or it's because this person da 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 da, like like it's really just being like, yeah, that relationship didn't work because we had different values, or right. I had a need, and they weren't available for it, right? And it wasn't because I wasn't worthy of it, it just didn't align. And and to be able to come from that space provides healing in itself, right? And so then it's like relational healing in that sense too, or like everybody leaves me, like you have that story because you were abandoned as a kid, or whatever it was, but then it's like, no, everybody doesn't leave me, like it's this relationship didn't work.
Yeah. My relationship story for a long time was like, I'm the girl before you find the girl. And that
was a good one.
That's a solid one.
That's a solid one.
Yeah. Sure. It was just like, oh, I'm the girl before you find the girl. And so like I had a hard time like really feeling secure in relationships, because I was just like, oh, well, eventually you're going to find the girl for you, and then you'll leave, and especially like being polyamorous, and being in relationships with people who were either, and this was like in my early 20s to like mid 20s, and especially like being with people who were either new to polyamory or like new with me, like this was like their first polyamorous relationship, right? Where it's like, yeah, I mean, hindsight 2020, it's like, first of all, no, like we were just in our early 20s, and like everybody's figuring themselves out, and so it's totally okay that there's a lot of relationships that are not going to work because we're all figuring our stuff out, and also like looking at it from the perspective of like, as we were figuring our stuff out just with who we wanted to be in relationships and who we wanted to be with, we were also figuring out what type of relationship structure really worked for
Mhm.
us. And so, yeah, like some of those didn't work. Like that's all that was going on.
Yeah.
But my story was, oh, I'm the girl before you find the girl. And so I was just like devastated
Mm.
when people would like find someone else and like, and like not to invalidate my emotions, like it is really heartbreaking when
Yeah.
someone breaks up with you because they've found someone that they want to be monogamous with. Like that's a heartbreaking thing to have
Yeah.
happen. So like, again, not invalidating my own feelings, but I didn't need to add the extra drama to it that I did.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary. And so like, yeah, in doing that healing work, just being, and like what Lee said, just like being able to be with, like, sure, like your hurt emotions, like it's totally,
Yeah, it
you're gonna get,
sucks.
yeah, it sucks, like it's gonna hurt, like you're gonna be heartbroken, but you don't have to add drama to it.
Mhm.
You can just be with like, yeah, like we weren't compatible, or we couldn't meet each other's needs in the way that, worked
Mhm.
for a relationship, or yeah, or we wanted different things, or whatever it is, right? And just being able to be with that rather than to like feed into a story that we've told ourselves about how we're not enough, or they're always going to find somebody else, or whatever it is. You can never trust men, you can never trust women, you can never trust whoever, you never people in general.
Never.
Never.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So like, yeah, just not feeding into those stories and just like being with what happens. And then the other part about relational healing is then that rippling out to communal healing as well. And how I've seen that play out is in how people communicate and understand one
Mm.
another, and also how people hold each other accountable in community
Mhm.
too. Because I think when we broaden out to community, depending on how broad we go, I mean, community could be like your close group of friends,
Mm.
or community could be like, you know, 50,000 people.
Right.
Like, so it's just, so, it definitely varies. But where I see that healing, actually, I'll even draw it out a little bit more. Where I see that healing is also in creating the shared values in a community
Mhm.
as well. I think one person who is a really, really great example is Maisha T. Hill. If you don't know her, you should look up her work. She does a lot of her main work is in racial justice. And she has a community called Check Your Privilege, and she's been running this community for years. And one of the things that she's really, really amazing, and you can tell that she's done just like so much self work, so much relational work. Like she's an incredible human. Like any other person, I don't agree with her on absolutely everything, but I think that she is a incredible human being, and certainly someone to learn from inside of healing and community. And one of the things that she does really well is about creating values and holding people accountable in community. And so, one of the things that she will say in her online stuff is, what we do here is, how we operate here is. And then it's not to like dictate people's actions, but it's more to say, like, we speak kindly to one another. And she'll call people out, like, even on Instagram, like, even in Instagram comments,
Mhm.
she's like, we don't do that here. We don't name call here. We speak kindly here.
Mhm.
We do this here. And she is like adamant
Mhm.
about it. And she's also not afraid to call things out when they don't work. Like I said, she does a lot of racial justice, and a lot of the people who follow her are white women. Hello, I'm in her main demographic.
Mhm.
And she will be like, "Hey, white woman, this is what I see you doing. These are the things that you do that make you unsafe." Like, and so she's willing to have direct conversations in community. So when I said earlier, like, how it translates in community is in communication and in being able to like hold people accountable and like have that type of communication, because she doesn't say it in a condescending way. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say it in a patronizing way. She doesn't even say it in an accusatory
Yeah.
way. She says it in a very direct, matter of fact, this is how you've been behaving that makes Black women feel unsafe,
Yeah.
right? And just like, and certainly it hurts to hear it, because it's like, damn, like I don't want to make people feel unsafe, like that doesn't feel good. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also like a way to heal in community is to be able to have that type of honesty and transparency and directness that I think especially um actually I don't even want to say it that way, but I think that's a lesson that we can really all learn, because I think that most of us in our society have grown up in communities where we don't speak directly. We gossip.
Mm-hmm.
We talk behind people's backs. We say things in front of people's faces that are sugar coated. When you or you say things that you don't even actually mean.
Yeah.
You say things that are untrue. You lie. You lie because you want to save face.
Yeah. I mean, it just
Mm.
comes back down
Mm.
to like all the patterns and stories within you. You know, people pleasing
Mm-hmm.
patterns, or just your relationship to conflict,
Yeah.
and in that space of healing it within yourself, you know, individually in your relationships, you know, you're then able to operate from that space, like where it just becomes like that's how you operate, because like you know your self-worth, you know what you deserve, you know what kind of relationships you want to be in. Like you want to be in relationships where you can have hard conversations and not, you know, just go at each other, right? But like you're very, you know, you're a lot more clear around like what is important to you, how you want to be treated, and being able to extend that to others, because it then comes back to like being able to offer others compassion and understanding, and to have those conversations when people are willing to have those conversations. And it's that's just going to be in your community in general, whether it's like, you know, a community like that where you're like signed up for it or whatever, or just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in the community that you share of, you know, some, you know, someone at the grocery store or whatever, and you're just like, what do you mean by that, you know? And
Yeah.
like
Tell me more
being,
about
yeah,
that.
like being able to speak to that more, and not coming from that space of, yeah, just doing it as everyone else does it, or as you
Yeah.
were taught to do it, you know. And again, that's just you
Yeah.
being able to operate in the world in the way that is genuine.
Yeah. And it ripples all the way back to like your self-healing, because I know that in my own
Mm-hmm.
self-healing, and again in facing all of these parts of me, like getting to know not just like the exiled parts of me, but also getting to know the parts of me that like I really love and enjoy. Like I love that I'm a strong person. I love that I am a uh, I love that I'm a queer person. I love that I'm into like sex and sexuality, like all of these parts of me that I've always viewed as positive traits.
Mm-hmm.
Like also not being contr- controlled by those as well, because when you have exiled parts and when you have like the forefront parts, and again in IFS it's called like protector parts. This is where my vocabulary of IFS kind of breaks down because I'm not an expert in that. But you have, you know, like take being strong. Like a lot of people see being strong as a positive trait and they like that about themselves or they like that in other people. But the problem with like glorifying or like be having to be that way, like it turns into a weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then it's like, oh well, I have to be strong, or I have to present strong, or like in order to not be perceived as weak I have to do this. So then being too tied to that part of your identity then serves to like break down or break you down in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of like that self-healing is being able to see all of the parts of you on the same playing field. Like the parts of me that are strong, and the parts of me that are weak are weak. and the parts of me that are strong could become weak, and the parts of me that are weak could become strong, right? Like, and so there's this fluidity in that, and also acceptance of that. And so then when you do get held to account by a partner or held to account in community, it's easier to hear those things. Like, it's easier for me to hear that I'm in unsafe space sometimes now that I've done a lot of this self-healing work. Like, I can actually hear that. I can allow that to sink in. I can understand it from, Maisha, in this example, Maisha's point of view. I can completely understand that from her point of view.
Mm.
And then I can be like, okay, how does this apply to me? Look out in my own life and be like, how do I play that out? What is my role here? Like, I can actually use that information constructively because I have healed enough where I'm not going to get defensive or upset, or like ashamed or feel so guilty that I get consumed by my own guilt and not be able to use that feedback constructively, right? So also when you start with that self-healing work, then that's another way that it shows up in relationships and shows up in community, is that you're really able to be with other people's experiences without blaming yourself or without, being defensive and blaming others, right? Like, you're really able to start to see things on a more level playing field and then be able to choose how you want to interact with that and like look at your options and get curious and
Yeah.
creative. And so that's also like another reason why it's like self-healing work is so healing for relationships and for community as well.
Or you notice when you are getting defensive.
Or
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like not that you're like, well, I'll never get defensive ever
Right.
again. I'll never feel guilty.
I'll never
ever
feel
again. I'll never get consumed by by guilt for 2 days. Like, no, like you will.
Right.
Right. But your response from that space, the way you take ownership and accountability for that will be different than, pre healing
Totally.
work.
Good point.
So,
Good point.
like I don't want to be like, wow, I still get defensive. Like, what is wrong with me? It's like, no, you will still feel that, right? And it's just like, but you'll be able to be like, you know what? I'm feeling really defensive around what you just said, and I need some time to kind of think about that, right? Like, I want to see what's there for me, or just just being able to acknowledge that, like, just that piece, right? Like, but. Or you got defensive and then you recognize it 30 minutes later and you're like, oh no, I got defensive and I said that thing to them. Oops. Okay, I need to go talk about that, But like, again, but that's the healing work, right? Like, and that's healing to be able to do that. That's healing to be able to receive that from someone else as well. And so it's like all of that, especially if you said something and then you go and apologize to someone and like, offer space to hear like how that was for them and all of that. That in itself is very healing for the other person to receive, because maybe it's like, they grew up never receiving apologies. They just got steamrolled all the time. And that brought that up for them, right? But you are just like, I am so sorry. Like, that was uncalled for. And this is, and I would love to hear how that was affecting you and what I could do moving forward to, make amends for this, right? And it's like that, to receive that, you're just like, what? Like, oh, shoot. And so just another example of like how your ability to offer that to someone is also offering them healing in exchange as well. So just another communal thing. Yay, healing work.
Healing work. I love doing this work and I love helping people with this work. Mm-hmm. It's really beautiful. It's like it's beautiful because it is like so rewarding. Yeah. And it's just like beautiful to be in our humanness and to have space to just be human and to, that would be like my ultimate dream and goal, is that all of us just have like space to be human, that we do this self-healing work that then turns into relational healing, that then translates into communal healing, and then we all just have space to be human. And I see that as totally possible. I mean, I've seen it in communities where that happens, so I think it's totally possible.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to say or share?
I think just, healing work is possible. Healing is possible.
Yeah.
Even when it feels like it's like absolutely not. It's like, no, it's there. Might be hard, might be time consuming, might be a long process, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And that's not with every healing, but some of them, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We love you.
Love you so much. We believe in you.
We do.
We're rooting for you.
We are. Love you, bye.
Love you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Queer Love Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships, or email us at queerloverelationships@gmail.com.
If you are interested in working with us, follow the Linktree link in the show notes. See if our offers resonate with you, and if they do, sign up with us or book a discovery session.
We are so grateful that you're here, listening, learning, and growing with us.
Until next time, keep loving.